Hi, welcome to ChamberLIVE. Today sees the return of our manufacturing forum. It's called Making It in Lancashire. And the views expressed in this seminar don't necessarily represent the views of the East Lancs Chamber of Commerce, and all facts are believed to be correct at the time of recording. Today is the 12th of August, 2020. So much content to get through today, so let's get straight on to our speakers. For manufacturers, indeed for all businesses across Lancashire, it's been a period of rapid change. Some of our businesses have operated throughout, some have recently returned after a period of full or partial shutdown. It's fair to say, though, that most are now looking at their entire operation with a different perspective and considering how to evolve and change, some of that in response to the challenges of COVID, but also many considering how to maximise the use of new technologies and working practices that they or others have adopted during this weird period. And that's very much the theme of today. What new technology can manufacturers adopt to drive their business growth through 2021 and beyond? What support is available to facilitate its rollout? And what tax relief can soften the blow of its introduction? To deliver all that for us, we're going to hear from an esteemed panel of four. I'll introduce them all now and then I'll let them take it away. So first of all, Nick Hall is from AMRC North West. He's a Yorkshire lad, but we're not going to hold that against him. His business life has been in Lancashire and the North West, so we've kind of adopted him. He worked at Granada. I first met him when he was at Blackburn Rovers during the Premiership days, been at Blackburn College. Now he's busy establishing AMRC North West. When he was a director at Granada Group, he raised 17 million for an MBO to set up Prime Resorts, which was very much a career highlight and a fascinating story as well if you get a chance to have a beer with him. Next up, Pete McCorney. Pete's a business advisor with Made Smarter. He's got a strong manufacturing background in the foundry, polymer, concrete, drainage and semi-pharmaceutical sectors. He was trained in total productive maintenance under the guidance of the Japanese Institute of Plant Management. As the Made Smarter business advisor for Lancashire, Pete supports manufacturing SMEs of all sizes to incorporate digitalisation into their processes, thus future-proofing their businesses and improving efficiencies. And some of the support options available include matched funding for appropriate projects, leadership development, specialist advice, and suitable student internships. And I'm sure you'll get more detail on that through this next hour. And then we've got a duo from PM&M. John Connor from PM&M has been working within the field of R&D tax credits for the last 8 years. He joined PM&M in December 2018 with the aim of providing a value-added service for existing clients, but also offering an external service for companies who may not have been actually capturing or maximising their claims. Since lockdown, he's been working with many manufacturing and engineering businesses to accelerate their R&D claims with over £3.5 million of qualifying costs identified. And last but not least, Peter Kelly. Peter joined the corporate finance team at PM&M in January this year as a director, having spent the last 20 years working with SMEs and owner managers across the North West. He's got a background in M&A, having worked in the transaction services team at Grant Thornton, in commercial banking as a relationship manager, and accredited leverage tender at Yorkshire Bank, in industry as a finance director at a metal recycling business, and most recently, before joining PM&M, as a sell-side M&A advisor, if only I knew what that meant. So that's our four, Peter, John, Pete, and Nick. That's our very esteemed lineup. Let's get underway then, and I'm going to hand over first to Nick. Over to you, Nick.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Thank you, Debbie, for inviting me along today to talk to you about the AMRC North West. I think Simon's just going to load the slides, all being well. Oh, here we go. Okay, so as Simon said, I'm Nick Hall. I'm establishing the AMRC for the North West, and I thought it'd be good to use this time to give you an update on where we're up to. Next slide, please, Si. So the agenda, really, quick update on the AMRC, where we're up to, what our capabilities are, a little bit of context that we're finding in the marketplace at the moment, and then I'd like to cover off some of the assists that we have, how we're currently working with our local SMEs, and then I know there'll be time for Q&A at the very end. Next slide. So I don't know if many people here know much about the AMRC, but we started off in Sheffield. The building you see is the 2050 building at Sheffield. It's one of about 12 buildings that we have. And we were asked by the Lancashire LEP to come to Lancashire to establish a research centre for the LEP area, the Lancashire Enterprise Partnership area. And that's currently what we're doing at the moment. If you go to the next slide, please. We work with around 100 industrial partners, people like Airbus, McLaren, BAE, and lots of other names that you see there. You don't actually need to be a partner to work with the AMRC. So, you know, the names are there, but anybody can come and talk to us and seek any help or advice that we can give. Next slide. So where is the Northwest in terms of where are we currently? The COVID actually did cause us a bit of a delay. We've got a temporary facility at UCLan. We employ 34 people now at that facility, and we've already got a number of industry demonstrators in place in the UCLan building. And the aim is to move our facility to a new facility, which you can see. It's anybody who knows the famous Kentucky Fried Chicken on the Blackburn-Preston Road, literally is an entrance there, and we're going to be on the right. The groundworks has started, but we struggled with a bit of a delay that COVID gave us around the start of the main builder. And the builder's been announced. It's Robertson Construction, and we're aiming to be in that new building by late autumn 2021. So yes, it's going to happen, slight delay, but things are in place to pick up the timing on that building. Next slide, please. The slide you see is sort of architect vision of how it's going to look. You're looking at about just under 5,000 square meter space. You've got workshops, so you've got an office, 3-story office facility, and then behind that a big workshop area. Again, that will house industry demonstrators for SMEs to come in and experience and have a look at. The industry demonstrators that we've got at the moment, you're looking at a cobotics cell. We're just putting a cobotics cell because there's a big demand in looking at robots working with humans. So that's going in our UCLan facility now, and obviously be relocated to the new one. We've got a big battery pack assembly facility that we've been doing some work with Ricardo on. We've got a number of additive manufacturing processes. We actually have got a Renishaw Quad 500 titanium printer. So anybody who's looking at printing metals, we've got some good technology there. And we're also going to have another 2 extra metallic printers, one which will be a robotic arm and one that will print under pressure, so we can demonstrate the different metallic printing techniques. We have data demonstrators as well. We've just been awarded a 5G contract to work with BAE around 5G, creating a smart factory, a factory of the future, but using 5G to bring all the processes together. And we've just also won a low carbon initiative, and we're looking at bringing in a lot of low carbon demonstrators into the new build. Next slide, please. The slide that you see is literally our research theme. So it's battery pack assembly. It's not the chemistry, it's how packs are put together. We've worked with a few people locally who need smaller battery packs to power things like maybe water meter reading. So you've got a pack and you need to get that energy into the technology to read your meters. So we've been looking at that for local companies. Additive manufacturing, as I alluded to. Robotics and automation, a key theme there. Machining, and then all aspects of digital manufacturing processes. Next slide, please. COVID-19 is really going to affect businesses forever. It's a bit of research that a company called Forrester had actually undertaken. They work with government and big companies like IBM. And there's some key things there's some short-term key things, and I think that's where we are at the moment in this short term. There's a medium term and a long term, but if we just look at the short term, so we're seeing that customers' expectations are changing, a lot around social responsibility, want locality, more online purchases. The future of work is changing. You know, companies are looking at automation. There's definitely a drive to replace humans with automation, especially around this social distancing. It's causing many issues in businesses. Artificial intelligence will be an area there. And obviously, people are moving away to remote working. So obviously, we're going to see more Zoom, I'm afraid, going forward. And the sort of technology and innovation that's coming through is sort of touch-free. They don't want, you know, lots of touch points. That needs to go. So they're using technology to get away from that. You're starting to see some increased government funding for technology, and there was something boosted issued that there's a big funding. There's a bit of a pot coming out in September around companies that want to get into technology. So that's an announcement, I guess, that will be coming out soon. And obviously, people are looking at replacing existing systems, predominantly to automate. Next slide. I hope PM&M will forgive me for this, but KPMG did a very big study about the effects of the global pandemic, and it was in June time. A lot of the things that they found are actually taking place. You're starting to see the job losses that they talked about, and obviously today's announcement with the GDP 20% fall. So there's lots of challenges out there for businesses, but what they did pick up is that businesses need to harness the new technologies, and there's never been more of a better time to get into that process. So KPMG was sort of flagging up that, you know, there's going to be the Internet of Things is going to become a bigger, a more important area of technology. You know, how you connect sensors, how you connect equipment, machine learning and AI, industrial robotics, that sort of replacing the humans or getting the sort of manual tasks robots or automation to do. 3D printing is an area of growth, and then obviously autonomous vehicles, or you can even have autonomous robots in your factory. So there's lots of technology there that's going forward. Next slide, please. So as part of our work locally, is we have a ERDF funded contract, so we can deliver about 200 assists. The small sort of stepping stone assists, really, 12 hours to about a week's worth of work, and it's funded. So it's funded by time, and it's for SMEs. So the definition of an SME is as per that slide. I've put Made Smarter there because they're the same sort of definitions. So I thought I'd just do that. And we do sort of refer to Made Smarter if we work with companies where we can. Next slide, please. So the sort of assists, I thought I'd put some things that we've been doing, because it's better to explain it that way, is we've been working with companies to help them with a digital transformation strategy. If you're going to change technology and change the way you move forward, it's better to have a long-term view, so you can drop technology in at given points on a journey. It's because if you get it wrong, it can really cause problems to your business. So it's creating that digital plan. So we have digital questionnaires. We can run a workshop. The information that comes from the questionnaire then helps us provide the detail for the workshop. And we can either do the workshop physically or digitally. And we then produce a report for the company, and that's their strategy going forward. That could be used to feed into Made Smarter, or it could just be used to help the business, because you need all the different parts and areas of the business to contribute, and that's what we do, is we pull all that together in a report. We did a project for heat sense cables around that, and it worked very well. Next slide, please. Data's massive focus around data, and there's lots of solutions to data, lots of ERP systems and manufacturing systems out there, and it's quite a nightmare for businesses. So we can come in and we can actually do a process mapping, so we can look at where you can gather data from. We might be able to look at some solutions and help sort of give you some ideas about where you can gather that data. And then we can look at the different MRP or ERP, depending on what system you're looking at, as a potential solution for you. So we could do that under our ERDF Assist. Next slide, please. We've been asked to do quite a few factory layouts or looking at processes. It's quite a simple one I've put on the diagram, and it's very difficult sometimes to share a map or a plan. But our Paula's, they produce butter oils, and she's moving from a home-based business, and she's got a first unit. It's a small unit, but it's just an empty shell. So we've tried to help her visualize how her processes could fit into that empty shell. And then we helped Peter Scott Printers, Murray Dawson, you may know him. He was moving his printing business to a new unit, and he just wanted, he didn't have a CAD drawing of his existing unit, and then an ability to look at the processes. So we helped him pull a plan together, and then he dropped that into his new building. So it helped him in his move to a new unit. IoT solutions, it's literally how you connect all the different parts of machines together using sensors, and how you then take that data maybe into the cloud or onto creating an app or onto your mobile phone. Again, we're working with companies doing that. Next slide, please. I've put there Additive, and what I've done is shown you a metallic printed part, very complex. So that's where you'd look at using metallic printing in complex parts, hard to manufacture, high value, obviously low volumes at the moment, but there's lots of change going on in Additive, and they're trying to get the more volume out in the process. And the one on the right is a piece of work we did for Pendle doors. The big fire in London, Grenfell Tower, caused a lot of changes to fire eggs, and they found that fire doors, the windows in fire doors, if the nail is not put in at a certain angle, the door burns through a lot quicker. So they had to prove that the angles of the nails were going in at a certain slot. So we produced a 3D printed a piece of equipment that fitted on the bottom of their sort of drill, and it gave them that sort of focus, so that they could prove that was happening. And that actually led on to the company going forward to Made Smarter, and they actually got some funding to actually have a 3D printer of their own. So we did that work for Pendle doors. Next slide, please. VR, we've been doing quite a bit of looking at VR. We did a bit of work for NIS Engineering. They produce big nuclear glove boxes, which are huge. And they struggled to get the client to be able to visualize what the glove boxes are going to look like, that they were going to make and manufacture. So we took their CAD and we put it into VR, And then it enabled them to strip away different layers of the glove box, but actually demonstrate what the thing was going to look like, and you could walk around it. It was quite good, and they were really pleased. So they were going to go ahead and purchase VR as part of a solution. Next slide, please. We're getting a lot of requests. I should really have put automation and cobotics. It's a mix of the two. We're getting companies that have got lots of manual work, but want to see if a robot working in that situation or an automation would help them. And we are getting a lot of interest around cobotics. We did a big piece of work for actually BAE, or the AMRC in Sheffield did a big piece of work for BAE. And as part of our demonstrator at the facility in UCLan, you'd be able to come and actually see a cobotic cell and how it works. But we can work with companies that are looking at that and talk to them about all the different things that they need to consider and help them through that process. The next slide. Discrete Event Simulation, DES, it literally is a software program, a very expensive one that Siemens, that we have through Siemens, our relationship with Siemens. And you can use this program to plan a production line. So you actually physically simulate the production line and the changes you want to make to the production line to make sure it's going to time, you're getting the throughput you need. What happens if I take that bit of kit out and put a new piece of kit in? And this simulation will give you the results. But we also used DES for COVID-19. When we did the McLaren ventilator challenge, the government ventilator challenge at Broughton, our colleagues at AMRC Wales used DES to simulate a new factory for the production of ventilators, and they used it to actually plot the throughput of people so that they could look at social distancing. So you can actually use DES for a number of different ways, but hopefully that gives you an idea. We have a machining group as part of AMRC North West, and we can look at the whole big factory operation, about sort of increasing product value. We can look at lean, and is it the 5 S's, is it all sort of laid out correctly? Where can you make savings? It literally is the whole sort of factory operation as part of our machining group. We're working with a company, Precision Manufacturing. They want to look at the data they can get from their Doosan machines. So they're not sure what data they can actually get from it, and then how they can use that data to help them become more efficient. Next slide, please. Also, as part of the machining group, we can work with individual processes. So we can look at machine tooling, tooling selection. We've been working with companies about actually the issues about tooling generally, and how you track it, how you trace it through the factory, because tooling, it can get lost or it can get mislaid if it's not properly managed. We've been looking at machining, optimizing work, computer aided manufacturing strategies. It's very varied, the sort of work. We've been looking at cutting fluids, because fluids can give off a toxicity, and it's just people are becoming more and more aware that the fluids can be toxic. So are there other fluids out there? And we're doing a test with a couple of companies on some fluids at the moment. And obviously the metrology, the measuring and quality of production. So it's quite varied, but we do have a machining group that are looking at all of that. I've put on this slide any questions. Please feel free to put any questions forward, and I think we're going to take them at the end. And on the last slide are my contact details on the next slide. And thank you. Hopefully I was at time.
You were, Nick. Yeah, thank you. Is it one of the Peters now?
I better unmute myself, hadn't I? I believe it's me.
There we go. Take it away, Peter.
Whenever you're ready, Simon. Right. I'm Pete McConey, as you can see from behind me, hopefully. I'm sorry for the slightly blurry effect around my head. I've got headphones on because the sound on my laptop isn't the best, so it's much more functional for me to use the headphones, but you do get that weird effect when I move, so I do apologize for that. So I'll go on to the next slide, Simon. Thank you. So Made Smarter, it's a pilot program, and it's been an interesting journey. We started in January of last year, and as it stands, we're running through until March 2021. Officially, that's when the pilot will close. What will happen thereafter, I'm sure the higher echelons at Westminster will make their decision at some point. They've got options available to them, but there's been no firm decision yet as to what happens there. On that side. So as it stands, we're looking at running till March 2021. And the overview of the pilot, it's been a really, really interesting pilot. We've had to take everything on a case-by-case basis. We've learned, customers have learned, and it's been an interesting journey, to say the least. The overview was to raise productivity, look at economic disparities, because Made Smarter is specifically for the North West, specifically for SMEs, as Nick so neatly defined earlier on, and specifically for manufacturing in all its guises, from food processing to high-end engineering. If they're an SME and they're making something and adding value, potentially Made Smart can support them in the area of digitalisation, and I'll come more to that in a second. We're looking to hopefully create new jobs, but more importantly, probably a higher focus for us is about upskilling the staff, and the number of projects that we put through. There's been a high evidence of staff being upskilled, which is absolutely fantastic. Increasing exports, etc., as a byproduct. And the main aim of the Made Smarter pilot program is to inform leadership, adopt industrial technologies, grow the area, ultimately grow the country, and take the country on a journey into industrial digitalisation with other countries, some of which are in front of us and some of which aren't. So that's sort of a little bit of a backdrop. So Simon, if I could have the next slide. So some of the support available, we can do business assessments. We're working very, very closely with Nick at AMRC around this sort of thing. We're doing digital road mapping ourselves. We're also working with AMRCs on them. I think we're up to about 1,000 businesses engaged yet. We've got a strong pipeline, and there's been over 100 successful applications to date, with a very high percentage coming from Lancashire. And whilst the whole project, Made Smarter covers the whole of the North West, my particular focus is Lancashire, although I'm part of the whole team. We can support with grant funding, which I'll explain a little bit more about. Student internships, we're looking to spread the knowledge, to share skills, but sometimes a student internship can also be about time. You might have the skills in a business, but you might not have the time to implement a project, or indeed work with anything related to Industrial Revolution 4.0, because the student doesn't necessarily have to be involved with a Made Smarter project. They can work on an internal project as long as it can be linked to IR 4.0, and we'll help fund that. There is a leadership management program linked with LUMS, and very soon also going to be running Liverpool and Manchester, but Lancaster University has been the driver of that. The feedback from the two cohorts has been absolutely fabulous. Just back to the grant funding. We're looking at up to 50% for appropriate projects, with a cap now of 20,000. One of the beauties of Made Smarter is you can have more than one project. I think Chris at Pendle's here, and I think they're on their second one, if I remember correctly. So that's all okay. I don't like these presentations like this. You're all blank, aren't you? You're just sort of talking away to a screen and you have no idea how it's being received. Can we have the next slide, please, Simon? Please boo or clap as we go along. I like this slide because one of the things about this slide is about the complexity of IR 4.0. I don't know if you can define it. I really don't. There's various things in there about risks and skill sets, etc. All the various sort of impacts of it, but it just sort of gives an illustration of the complexity of IR 4.0 and what that means, which leads to another slide in a second. So if you can dink on to the next one for me, Simon, if you don't mind me using the word dink. So Industry 4.0, it's about the value chain, availability, accessibility, but the key, absolute keys to this are data and connectivity. This is about adding value by using data. The data itself is of limited or virtually no value. It's what you do with it, how you share it with others, getting management information, having information in real time so you can make those important decisions, not looking at your production schedule or your production output 3 days, from 3 days hence. It's the key to this is data, and that's what Made Smarter is fundamentally all about. So very simplistically, if we can hit the next slide, please, Simon. These are the sort of areas that we're looking to support, but we're not limited just to these. And it's very similar to the slide that Nick was talking about earlier on: additive manufacturing, cyber systems, sensors, Internet of Things, cloud hosted services, etc., etc., etc. I'm not going to read the whole slide. So these are the areas that we're supporting, but we take everything case by case. And, sometimes something looks like, yeah, it's an Industrial Revolution 4.0. It isn't quite. Others you're not sure about, and they turn out to be absolutely 4.0. We're learning as we go along, but we're learning for a reason. So if you want to pop onto the next slide, Simon, because this, to me, is so complicated. This is a sort of a full factory information bus, all the various things we can do. And this can be frustrating, can be difficult to understand, can raise thoughts in people's heads around what should I be doing. And we want to simplify this. One of the main things about Made Smarter is to spread the knowledge, to share, to talk to the SME owners, to talk to the decision makers in their language, in their words, to say, how can we work this? What does it actually mean? So if you go on to the next slide, Simon, because what we found are these sort of things. The SMEs, some of the feedback we've had from SMEs, what's Industry 4.0 all about? I'm not sure it's for me. We've been doing fine. We're not broke. Don't fix it. We haven't got the resources to do that. I've got a factory to run. Absolutely right. You've got, you've got to earn the money. You've got to get the profits. You've got to pay the wages. You've got people relying on you. Where do I go? It's a minefield out there. Lancashire has an enormous support network, enormous, and it is a minefield. There's no doubt about that. But myself and Nick at AMRC and others who are on here and sort of different from here at Boost and LEP, etc. One of our fundamental ethos is if I can't help you, I'll open the door to who can. And that's one of the drivers that's made Lancashire so successful for Made Smarter. How much it's going to cost? It's going to cost me a fortune. I was looking at a presentation from Cambridge University the other day. It was really, really interesting. And it was digitalisation on a shoestring and things you can do to digitalise on a budget of under £500. And I was like, wow, I love this. And we've got fantastic resources in Lancashire that can support that. Things like the AMRC, Digit Me Too, etc. at UCLan. So what's it going to do to my business? I'm not sure. What do I need to do these? This is some of the feedback we've had from the SMEs, and this is why we need to support to help people through so they have a clearer understanding. I don't like to use the word educate. I'm not clever enough to educate people. I can make information available for them to learn as they wish. Is that okay, Simon? Would you like to ping on? So what can we do? We can raise awareness of business transformational opportunities. We can do a digital roadmap and these sort of things. We have experts in different fields: additive manufacturing, Internet of Things, big data, robotics. They'll talk to you. They're more than happy to talk to you. This is all free to you. There isn't a copper coin to be paid for this, other than the leadership skills course where you contribute £2,500. Other than that, it's all free to use service. So the leadership in the new world, supporting the leaders, these people make a difference. Lancashire has a fantastic history of leading industrial revolutions historically, an amazing history. And we see the mills at all the various sites off the M65. I love them, absolutely love them, because those people made a difference, and that's what we're doing now. The student placements are funded. I think it's up to 140 or 148 hours of support you can have. Doesn't have to be linked to a Made Smarter project, as long as it can be linked to Industrial Revolution 4.0. So that can be looking at an ERP system, helping you with something else. And we fund that. We leverage other support from the North West, which I'll come to in a minute. And as I said earlier on, the match funded grants up to 50% to a maximum of 20,000, but you can have more than one. I mentioned Chris at Pendle earlier on, and he's just popped a message up saying, the first one, our first grant went brilliantly. The second one's still going through. So fingers crossed on that one, Chris. So next slide, please, Simon. So what do? We learn a bit about your business. We're not going to sit on your business for a week and just learn, but looking exactly as Nick was saying about where do you want to be short, medium term, digital road mapping and that sort of thing. And then we can sort of say, these are options available to you, but we don't make decisions. The decisions are always yours. All we're there to do is to advise and support and help steer you, but the choices are always yours. And where it might work and what we're finding with a number, and I've got a couple of case studies later on, is that as companies are taking on and adopted technology, they sort of said, you know what, I can do more with this. And that's one of the points of this. As you learn it and get comfortable with it, there's this self-learning can take place and people can grow from there, or companies can grow. So we also have a supplier list. We don't recommend anyone, but we can say these people have been through a process, so there is some credibility in using these, and some of them we've used before. And we're continually adding to that list. One of the aims of Made Smarter is to have a national supplier list to aid the development, the uptake of these technological developments. Because you know as well as I do, sometimes finding a supplier can be a nightmare. You go into Google, look at the first three, or you delve and delve and delve, and I'm still not sure, I don't know them, or I'll stick with somebody I trust, and they might not have the quite the right skill set. Let's have the discussion. Upskilling staff, your work staff, and developing leadership skills, I've already touched on. Student placements. And one other area that we in Lancashire solely are trying, and it's a pilot within a pilot that started last week, is we're working with Chamber Low Carbon and McCaw to push forward the net zero agenda that the government is driving now. That's an important part of it. But what I need to make perfectly clear around this is, whilst we can support with grants, etc., it's only from the point when we agree to support you, and it's internal costs. So, sorry, external costs only. We don't cover any internal costs, and that's really where John and the crew at PM&M fit in, because quite often, not always, but quite often, Made Smarter projects are innovative, they're new to the company, and they may attract R&D tax credits. But I won't eat John's sandwiches, I'll let him explain that in his own inimitable style. Simon, do you want to hit the next button for me? So, throughout the North West, Made Smarter links with a range of other organisations, specifically in Lancashire. We work very closely with Lancaster University, very closely with Boost and the LEP, Advanced Manufacturing Resource Centre, DigitMe2, and also the Manufacturing Growth Fund. In many cases, the Manufacturing Growth Fund can work with an organisation and support them with grant funding and expertise on part of a project, and then the next part of the project is a Made Smarter one. And there's a lot of dovetailing and a lot of collaboration goes on between the various organisations that support Lancashire. We do try. I know it's complicated and we don't always get it right, but trust me, we do work hard at this. And that reminds me, Nick Hall owes me a coffee from last time. So, Simon, if you want to dink on to the next slide, what types of manufacturers? I touched on this earlier on. If you're adding value and making something, that's where we fit in. Food processing, gin distillers, glass cutters, baby milk powders, from the smallest 2.5 people to 220 employees. If you're an SME, we're looking to help you. And if we can't help you, we ask if we can help your supply chain. So Simon, do you want to dink on for one? So what have we found so far? A range of things. This can hardly be a surprise. It was certainly one surprise to us. So who's ready for what? All over the place. Some of the industry in Lancashire is real cutting edge, amazing stuff. And others, quite rightly, are still almost using sort of slate and chalk. A vast range, which is fabulous, because that's the pilot. If we don't find everybody, then we're not really doing the job properly. Sometimes there's been perceived resistance, sometimes from the senior management. Sometimes the technologies, believe technologies are beyond people. But overall, there's been an amazing willingness to take on board this technology, which is why Lancashire has been so successful with their projects to date, because of the willingness and the desire and the drive of Lancashire SMEs. Simon, would you like to click one on? So why would you do this? The transformation, the business is changing, digital transformation. It's about your profitability. Obviously, you've got to worry about your bottom line, but about your competitiveness now more than ever, as Make UK is becoming a bigger brand and imports are being reduced. especially say in the food sector, because some countries won't allow other countries to export their food to the UK because they want to use it in-house, in country. It's about growth, differentiating, and this net zero agenda. We're under COVID-19, which Nick touched on. There's also about the social distancing. Staff are going to be absent. If we hit a second wave, people are going to go missing. Supply chains disrupted, customer disrupted. You had a customer 3 weeks ago and now they've gone. Migrant labour availability and the financial situation of many organisations now. Huge challenges for us, and Made Smarter with others can help address some of these. Would you like to hit the next one, Simon? I'm aware I'm running out of time. I've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'll whiz through these. I'm under Nick's strict rules, I only have 17.5 minutes. So key about IDT adoption. Production efficiencies, power consumption, that comes under the low carbon sort of thing. Reducing wastage is just dead money, your OEE, your 6 key losses. Real-time information, additive manufacturing, reduced waste, shorter iterations on your prototyping and this sort of thing. Looking at a workforce which is different, more highly skilled, fresh insights, etc. And potentially, and the main aim, future-proof your business. You want to be here next week, you want to be here next year. Do you want to hit the next button, please, for me? So a couple of quick case studies before I finish. I chose specifically these two because I have a particular affinity to them. DA Techs, they refurbish alloy wheels. Lovely little business. I went in, had a conversation with them, came out with a completely different conversation. They changed, they were starting to look more at the data and really picked up on the benefits for it. Fantastic. They went through a project. We worked on with AMRC on this one. They introduced some new processes, digitalized the thing, and then they want a contract to do these on site. So their second project is to basically replicate what they do in-house on car auction sites and have an integrated system monitoring the whole thing in real time. Fabulous, lovely business. Only small, but fabulous business. Next one, please, Simon. And this is Nutri-Life. The colour's not best on there, is it? This is one of those companies, they work in sort of the protein bar market. And when COVID hit, their sales went through the roof. And they were looking at automation and control, which they had a little of. They had paper records and all the stuff like that. They brought in a new line. We support to do that. And they just lodged their second application to duplicate the first one and further enhance their integrated systems. Because of they were very fortunate that the sort of COVID-19 situation, the lockdown worked in their favour. So that's a little bit of overview of Made Smarter. Please ask any questions at the end. You can go to the website, madesmarter.uk. My number is up behind me and my email address. So if you're an SME or a technology provider and you want to be on our supplier list, or you're looking to get some digital transformation information, or a student, please feel free. Please feel free. So I think that's more or less me, Simon. I believe. I think that's the end of my slides, if that's all okay. I'm happy to take questions later on. And I think I've got to hand over to John now, seamlessly.
Thanks, Peter.
More than a pleasure. Mute.
Good morning, everybody. So as kind of Simon's introduction, so my name's Jonathan Connor. R&D Tax Credits Manager at PM&M. Next slide, please, Simon. So who we are, just a little bit about myself. Worked at PM&M since December 2018, primarily looking to cover off internally on helping businesses to claim R&D tax credits, and also externally as well to grow a full service offering, but also to support a lot of East Lancashire, North West based businesses to A, claim R&D tax credits if they're not, but B, maximise their entitlement if they are claiming in some form, but maybe not fully utilising the scheme in its full glory. So I've worked at PM&M since December 2018. Principally, we are a firm of accountants, tax and business advisors, but have a full service offering throughout corporate finance, wealth management, accounts, audit, multiple disciplines, and based across so head office in Blackburn, office in Bury, and an office in Burnley, and significant presence over there as well. Established over 100 years, and currently have a team of 110, 115 employees, and that's looking to grow as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of just what myself and Peter Kelly, Corporate Finance Director, are going to cover today. So a little bit on my side of an introduction to R&D tax credits, some of the hallmarks of an R&D project within the manufacturing engineering industry, a COVID-19 update, just where HMRC are up to, and some of the numbers. And then the wraparound of everything that Nick and Peter have covered off in terms of that digitalisation of your production process and the R&D considerations around that, in terms of the funding. And then, you know, if your business is a manufacturing engineering business and they haven't claimed R&D tax credits, you know, why not? Or what, more so, why should you claim? Peter will then follow on in relation to an introduction about corporate finance at PM&M since Peter joined earlier this year. Changes to the way that we're working, how corporate finance and the R&D side of things, myself and Peter work quite closely hand in hand with funding and the support, and then a bit of an update in terms of CBILS, bounce back loans, and an update on general funding. Next slide, please. And another one. So just a little bit of an introduction to R&D tax credits. For those of you that don't know, R&D tax credits was introduced in the year 2000. So we've been going 20 plus years. Brought in to, in essence, increase UK innovation, productivity, and reward UK businesses for the time and investment that they're putting into new products, processes, systems, across, you know, multiple disciplines, whether that be a manufacturing business, software, construction, architecture, many different sectors. There's two schemes. So an SME scheme, which has a benefit for every £1 that you're looking at spending on qualifying R&D activities, of between 24.7% for a profitable UK SME business, and up to 33.35%, which can be, you know, a spectrum between, but for primarily a loss-making business who believe they can't ordinarily claim, but actually in some instances it can be more beneficial for a loss-making business to put a claim forward for R&D tax credits, as there's cash benefits and repayments that we can get back from HMRC. So the rates that we're talking about, so the SME rate, and there's also a large company research and development expenditure credit. The relief on that side of things is up to 13%. So broadly speaking, half of the SME benefit. So if you breach 100 million euro turnover, 500 employees, 86 million euro assets on your balance sheet, then you will be a large company. There's an and/or scenario in there that can potentially get you in under an SME scheme, but it's important to notice, and the funding aspects that I'll cover a little bit later on in the slides, it's important to know how your project's being funded with the assistance of maybe Made Smarter, AMRC, Innovate UK grants, etc., because that can impact on what scheme you ultimately claim under. So R&D tax credits, that, you know, the scheme's broadly stayed around the same guidance for quite a number of years. In this 2020, HMRC are currently consulting on whether to extend the scope to include data and cloud, hosting, server costs, that type of thing, which that's hopefully going to come out early 2021, because, as you can imagine, lots of software businesses, even manufacturing businesses, have quite chunky costs where they're renting server space. And if we can include, you know, those costs into a claim, it's an additional benefit back to those businesses. In terms of some examples within the manufacturing industry of the hallmarks, the typical signs that we're looking at from an R&D project. Overall, we're looking at HMRC's headline statement of a project which seeks to achieve an advancement in science or technology. Now, a lot of the time that's perceived to be quite frightening in terms of its meaning, and actually we don't do any R&D. So we've got to break that down a little bit further and say, you know, are you developing products, processes, systems, materials? Are you looking to improve your production line, your processes? How are you looking to do that? You know, have you got patents? If so, that is a tick box in terms of the hallmarks of an R&D project. If not, are you seeking to put an appreciable improvement into your products or production line? Now, some of the things, and most of the things that you covered off, Nick, in terms of AI, robotics, automation, are going to be in that remit of a qualifying R&D project. But if you're looking at developing new alternative materials that might have an impact on a cost efficiency, or an operational efficiency, productivity, automation or production of existing processes, existing systems or production lines, those are the hallmarks. Again, scaling up of production processes. So if you're looking and say we've actually got a small batch product that we've done in essence our prototyping on, when you come to scale that up, it might not be as simple as, times 3 each ingredient that's within that additive, that component. If there's an element of trial and error, research development in that scale-up process, again, you're likely to be ticking the boxes of a qualifying R&D project. Adapting, changing, legislation and industry requirements, health and safety, all that plays a massive part, and something that we see as an ongoing basis. That's ultimately where you may have had an R&D project in years gone by that may now resurrect itself because of these legislative changes that you have to then implement a project or an improvement on the back of. Integrating new and old technologies. You might be working on a reduced budget, and one of a case study that has always stuck with me in my time within the industry was a company, paper-based manufacturing business. They had a production site, or were requested to put a production site out in Dubai to buy a new piece of kit to integrate kind of new machinery. They were talking £10 million for this project. They didn't have £10 million to spend on this piece of kit. They had a budget of £1 million. So what they did was they bought 2 old existing pieces of machinery and integrated them together. Never meant to work together, but the integration and communication links and complete reconfiguration that they put in, they were able to achieve the same performance out of a £10 million piece of brand new kit in a £1 million piece of kit that they've integrated and worked smartly and developed new concepts and ideas into. And then I suppose the final one, just to cover off, is stringent specifications, tight tolerances. If you're looking to develop, precision engineering, often, those areas again will form part of an R&D project. Next slide, please. A little update in terms of how COVID has impacted R&D tax relief claims and what we're seeing at the minute. In a recent consultation with HMRC in July, 16,000 UK SME companies submitted an R&D tax relief claim between the period March to June. So within that 3 months, they received a massive influx in the amount of claims received. That resulted in over £700 million, I think it was 716 million of physical cash repayments or corporation tax savings that was provided to those UK SME businesses, which obviously in the current times provided a massive help in terms of cash flow, but also allowed them businesses that were developing and constantly innovating and trying to keep that path going. It allowed them to reinvest money into that. HMRC processing those R&D claims within 28 days is the point at the bottom, but they are processing claims within 28 days, which is a very quick turnaround for HMRC. Typically, it's 6 to 8 weeks that you expect to see a repayment from HMRC. We found at PM&M that 100% of the claims that we've submitted have been turned around within that, and the statistic in the industry is 95% plus of claims have been received within 28 days. So again, timely injection for UK businesses that have innovated in either the previous 2 financial years, so we can currently look back 2 years. So anybody who's got an August, September year end, we could potentially go back to the August, September 2018 year. And in essence, same again for the 2019 year. Ultimately, 2 years worth of claims that you would have claimed nothing for. If you can get some relief back in respect of those projects, it's a worthwhile exercise to go through. Sybil's loans, bounce back loans, HMRC have come out and confirmed that those are deemed to be a notified state aid. Likewise, the R&D tax scheme for SMEs is a notified state aid. And what you can't have is, in essence, 2 state aids on 1 project from an R&D stance. So to qualify for an SME, you've obviously met the employee, you've met the turnover, you've met the balance sheet conditions. You can claim the maximum 24.7% to 33% relief. Now, if you've received a project-specific Sybil's, you've gone and you've put that application forward because you want that money to, in essence, continue with your project, then that will push you from the SME relief into the large RDEC relief, which ultimately will cut your R&D claim by half, if not further, if you're subcontracting some of those activities. If there is anybody who's kind of a manufacturing engineering business that has gone down that Sybil's route, bounce back loans, it's important to check the contracts and the wording within that, because that can, like I say, if you're expecting to receive back corporation tax reduction or saving of £20,000 next year, and actually HMRC pick up that you've received a CBILS and it was project specific for that specific R&D project, it's likely that you're not going to receive that £20,000 injection that you were thinking of, or cash flow saving. In general, the HMRC have been very positive in how they've dealt with the claims, and obviously giving the relief and the money out to those UK innovative businesses. The last statistic on kind of lots of companies perceive HMRC to pass the claims first time and then you never hear back from them. But actually they've prevented £350 million worth of what their terminology was fraudulent claims. So they are actively on the radar, and that's something that in the next couple of years we think we'll see more of, that their processes will improve. They'll get tighter in terms of some of the companies that are putting these projects forward, which it might look a little bit spurious in terms of some of the activities that they're claiming for. But all in all, the last 5 months from HMRC have been very positive. They've dealt with the backlog. They've provided the claims within the 28 days, and ultimately that's going to fund the businesses to try and push forward again in the coming months. Next slide, please. So I've kind of just covered off in terms of the CBILS loan, but it's a key wraparound, and it comes back to the AMRC, Made Smarter involvement as well. If you're looking at that production facility that you've got and trying to put some form of digitalisation in there, appreciably improve on your products, your processes, your systems, then if you're going to fund that by cash, funded by the company, then you are going to be able to claim the entitlement to the SME scheme, the full 24.7% for profitable company and up to the 33% relief for a loss-making SME. Now, if you receive a subsidy or some funding towards that project, for instance, you may have gone to Nick at AMRC and you've got some of the technical support. You may have spoke with Peter and you've got a match funded of up to £20,000. Now, if you've gone along that option, then what that's going to do is potentially push that project into a split claim. So you've potentially got an SME claim for any expenditure that you're incurring. Easy way of looking at it is £100,000 example. Made Smarter will give you 20,000. If they're going to give you £20,000, that part of the claim would have to be under the large company scheme, and then the balance that the company is going to fund, you could potentially claim the maximum SME relief. If you received a notified state aid, so for instance, an Innovate UK grant, or as I've mentioned, a project-specific CBILS application, then whether you've funded additional money into that project through the company or not, all of that project will be pushed from the SME scheme to the large RDEC R&D scheme. It's a massive difference between what you're expecting, again, of 20,000 and potentially 10,000. So just, if you're going to go down that path, it's key to know how funding, how involvement with, a lot of the time companies need that initial support. So the right option might be to speak with Peter and get a match funding for a project. That will ultimately then provide you with that upfront kind of capital to push forward with your project, or the assistance from Nick. But if you can fund that project through cash, if you've got that facility available, it can sometimes be more beneficial than the others, but that's purely dependent on a company's position and circumstance at the time. And then the last one is development in a joint venture arrangement. So if you're working with a supplier, customer on a joint venture project, it's important that if you can separate your costs and kind of keep accurate records between those two cost systems and companies, then you're both going to be entitled to put a claim forward. And actually then, you're fully maximising your entitlement. Likewise, your customer or your supplier or your contractor who you're working with, they can maximise theirs as well. And kind of the point I've just got on the bottom of the screen about a collaborative and joined-up approach at the start of a project is really key. It's not only going to provide you with the greatest return on investment from an R&D stance, it's going to provide you with the access and the doors to get into Made Smarter, to AMRC, to Innovate UK if need be. We deal with companies that have that money in the bank that can fund that project straight off the bat, and they may not need Peter or Nick, for instance's support. But actually, there's a lot of companies that come to us saying, we've got this project idea, or, we are a startup business. How can we assist those companies? It might not be for me, if it pushes it from an SME to an RDEC, that's absolutely fine. If they can access more funds and more technical assistance and support through schemes like AMRC, Made Smarter, then ultimately we want to put the company in the best possible position to be, around in the next 5 or 10 years. So I think if there's any companies that have a project that they're thinking about, whether they've received CBILS or a bounce back loan, it's just important to understand how that will impact in on your R&D project, how that will then be funded, ongoing as that project kicks off. And that's kind of a little bit where Peter will come in terms of some of the funding routes and the activities that Peter's been getting involved with. Next slide, please. So why should your UK-based SME manufacturing business claim R&D tax credits? So in the year 2017-18, which is the last fully published statistics on R&D claims, 4.3 billion of relief was given to those businesses, corresponding to 31.3 billion of qualifying R&D expenditure, being staff costs, consumables used in prototype development, a proportion of utilities, light, heat and power, and subcontracted activities, whether that's testing, whether that's external assistance required to, push that project forward. The average R&D claim for a Northwest-based SME is a cash repayment or a corporation tax saving of 38,768, which, if you look at it against the average SME claim across the UK of 53,000, is obviously lower. But there's a number of factors that come into that, obviously, in terms of the number of claims submitted and the types of businesses, I suppose the differential between the North and the South. But, if you're asking yourself, are we a business that constantly innovates, constantly looks to improve, have a number of products that we're releasing, or looking to streamline internally your processes, gain cost efficiencies and productivity? I'm sure, certainly if it's not historically, moving forward, you're going to be looking at those cost efficiencies, production process efficiencies. You should be considering schemes like Made Smarter, schemes like AMRC, and also how that will then knock on into your R&D project. If you can fund a project and you believe it's going to cost you £100,000 and you can get £25,000 of that back from HMRC as a corporation tax saving or a cash benefit, it's a bit of a no-brainer in terms of looking through that exercise. And Peter's going to cover off at the end, but at the minute, PM&M are running off some free consultations to understand, what you need to know about an R&D project. If you're uncertain of certain aspects, we run through that full process in a kind of 30-minute, 45-minute consultation so that we can provide you with tools and the mechanics to put a robust and a watertight system in place, which will then ultimately maximise your claim as you move forward as well. Next slide, please. And that's kind of my slide. Again, questions at the end. And I'll pass on to Peter, who will deliver his part on the corporate finance and funding options that we've got at PM&M.
Thanks, John. Thank you. We see a very close link between corporate finance, research and development, and innovation. So that's why I've joined the call and speaking with John, and I work very closely with him. So the first slide there is just showing you the range of services that we at PM&M offer within our corporate finance team. It's the full company life cycle, from incorporation, business planning, through to forecasting, cash flow forecasting, fundraising, longer term strategic planning, and ultimately start thinking about exit retirement planning and acquisitions and disposals. But we're there for the journey of the business and the journey of the business owners. Next slide, please, Simon. So what we've seen or heard over the course of this call is that Northwest businesses in particular are extremely creative and innovative, but the last 5-6 months have perhaps driven bigger changes in businesses than perhaps we've ever seen before, in terms of where we work, the notion of the number of people working from home or socially distanced working, the drive to become more automated and digitalisation of businesses, and also the ever-changing customer base. Customers might not even be there, or what they wanted from us 6 months ago is completely different to what they want from us now. But the result of all of that is that there is definitely a need for more R&D projects, and then, as we've seen, there's support and funding available to drive all that. Simon, please. So sometimes you could view the role of corporate finance is the Italian policeman standing in the middle of the road, directing traffic and signposting people. So we don't necessarily know all the answers, but the whole point is that we can connect people to the likes of AMRC, Made Smarter, Boost, private equity, venture capital, business angels, all those sorts of things. But fundamentally, the three areas that we see that corporate finance can support R&D and business owners in driving those projects is around, one, working capital, and particularly that managing their cash flow. I'm sure that a lot of businesses have seen their cash stretched over the last 6 months, and working capital is the lifeblood of any business. Putting together business plans, forecasts, how do we get from where we are now to where we want to be, thinking about what we need to do to get there, not just about the projects that we're talking about in terms of the automation, changes to the way we work, but what requirements are there for CapEx, or recruitment, and then that leads on nicely to the fundraising. So it's always about what's the purpose, what's the fund, what's the project, what's the funding for, and again, within corporate finance, we can support people in matching the right funding for the particular project. So we see those are the three key areas that we can support. Just a quick final slide, Simon, if you could please. What we have seen over the last 6 months is the Sybil's and bounce back loan schemes, which have been around to support business owners. Significant amount of money, a number of applications have been made and drawn, particularly on the bounce back schemes. But this is more about making people aware that these schemes are due to expire in September. If you haven't made an application, you think you might need to, you need to start thinking about it. And whilst you don't necessarily need a cash flow forecast to do it, when was the last time you looked at your cash flow forecast and updated that? Recent survey said that 20% of only 20% of SME business owners either had a cash flow forecast or had reviewed it in the last few months. And we see that as a living, breathing, working document that any business owner would want. So just to wrap up, we work alongside John on the R&D Tax Credits. We're currently offering free one-to-one consultations with business owners to talk about R&D projects, funding, cash flow forecasting, or any other aspect of their business. And Simon, that is me in a nutshell. So there's a little bit more detail, and hopefully you've all got our contact details.
Brilliant, thank you, Peter. I'll leave that slide up for.
So back to you, Sam.
Yeah, thank you. I'll leave that up for another 20 seconds, and then I'll clear it so that we can see everyone in full. But I'm sure there are a few questions. So if anyone's got any questions, you can either pop in the chat box, or if you just want to unmute yourself and put your question directly to any of our four panel, the two Peters, Nick and John, then please do so. I'll kick off. Is there a business? Apologies if you can hear howling in the background, my dog's just dreaming. Is there a manufacturing business that you wouldn't be able to help? Is there I sort of ask the question upside down almost, or is the message, if you're a manufacturer in Lancashire, talk to us because we'll be able to do something for you across the three different organisations?
There are one or two exclusions from Made Smarter's perspective. We can't support cigarette or e-liquid manufacturers specifically. And also, if someone is adding value but it is required by law, it doesn't come under the SME definition. I was dealing with a company who basically are a lab, but they're adding value by being part of the quality process for a manufacturer. But it is a legal requirement that they use, that the manufacturer does this, and that they use specific labs to do that. And we can't support that because it's a legal requirement. It's an odd little quirk. I think they're the two. Other than that, anything that's processed, add value, is assembled or made smarter can pretty much cover.
Yeah. I mean, from our perspective, Simon, as long as the company's an SME, I mean, the key thing is if the company could have, say, a week's worth of free work, what would that free work look like that would benefit the company? So, you know, what are the blockers? What issues are you facing? So if you could just sort of, companies share those with us, then we'll try and see how we can help. As I say, it's free time, free research is there. So we can help really any company as long as it's an SME manufacturer.
Yeah, likewise on our side, you know, we want to connect and speak with as many kind of Northwest manufacturing style businesses as, you know, as possible, but there's no real service that is off the table. And certainly from an R&D stance, whether you're an SME or a large company, it really doesn't matter. There's obviously some quirks within the schemes, but apart from that, yeah, any manufacturing business can access that R&D tax relief scheme.
Okay, thanks, gents. Any questions from the assembled audience? Claire? Hi, Claire.
Hi everybody. My question's mainly for now for Nick. Just do the AMRC work with local integrators in the Northwest?
Yeah, we do. We're not there to integrate. We're not there to actually do the solution. We're there to help look at the technology, and we welcome working with local integrators. Yes, it's in our interest too. Absolutely.
Right, okay, brilliant. So would I be able to connect with you, possibly?
Absolutely. Just we'll get a Zoom call or whatever and have a chat.
Yes, brilliant. That sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Any last questions before we wrap up? Okay. Right, well, thank you to the two Peters, to Nick and to John, to AMRC North West, to Made Smarter and to PM&M. Thank you to all our attendees as well. We will put the video on YouTube probably tomorrow by the time we've had a chance to edit it and caption everybody up, because there's a lot of captions because there's a lot of speakers. So that'll probably go live tomorrow. I think we're okay to circulate the slides. It may be that we have to change some of them, but we'll circulate a version of the slides once I've had confirmation from everyone that we're okay to do that, and that'll come round to anyone who's registered to the registered email addresses today. Those will also contain the contact details for Peter, for Nick, for other Peter, and for John as well. Our next event is next Wednesday, and ChamberLIVE continues each Wednesday at 10:30. Remember, if you're a Diamond Ambassador, we've got a special day event 2 weeks today on the 26th involving the Bank of England, and you'll find the details of all our upcoming events at chamberlive.co.uk. I'm going to go and tend to my dog. Have a wonderful Wednesday afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye
Thanks,
now.
guys.